Let's take my grandfather's story because it's his story that's so important. His name was David Rosenwasser, later changed to David Rusin. Living in this small town of Pavlich, in the store. As you know, his father was in the synagogue all day long, and his mother was running the store, and he worked in the store. And there was no future. There was no future for him. So as most of the people did at that time, they tried to get visas to come to the United States or Canada. And he got a visa to come to Canada. And he left his wife and 3 children behind. And he was about 27 or 28 years old, and he already had a wife and 3 children. And he made his way across Europe. And how did they make their way across Europe? To Bremen, Germany, to catch a ship. They went from shtetl to shtetl. They stayed at a rabbi's house, and they were taken in, as you know, along the way. It was like the Underground Railroad. They went from a little carriage ride here and a little train here, and he made his way to Bremen, Germany, got on a ship, and came to Canada on that ship. You can imagine he wasn't exactly first class. Down there in the 3rd class, and now wouldn't eat the food, had his own food that he had a little packle with him. And finally, about a week later, the ship arrives in Halifax, Nova Scotia. When there was a train siding right next to where the ships came in, and as the passengers got off the ship to get into the trains to go to the various places, the announcement was made at the station in many languages that if you have papers, that people will vouch for you in Montreal and Toronto, the 2 big cities, you can get off the train. But if you don't have papers, you have to stay on the train until the train arrived in Winnipeg in the Midwest. They're populating the West, and that's where you could get off the train. My grandfather had no papers. He was on the train. The train ride comes through, and he arrives in Winnipeg, Canada. He arrives in Winnipeg, Canada. He gets off the train on a wooden platform in Winnipeg, Canada, in a strange country, in a strange city. He doesn't speak the language. He doesn't know anybody. And he's standing on the platform. And as he does, a voice rings out. Sudu Yidden, are there any Jews on this train? Well, you can imagine my grandfather hearing this Yiddish expression in this strange country after all that long trip that he made. He fell upon this man, and he embraced him. This man's name was Motko Wiedman. In the 1870s and 1880s, the first Jews arrived in Winnipeg, and 5 families decided that one member of each family, at least one member, would meet every train that came in case there was a Jew aboard. And this Mr. Wiedman took my grandfather back to his home, where he gave him a hot meal, which he hadn't had in weeks, a hot bath, which he hadn't had, and put him to bed to sleep. The next morning when he got up, Mr. Wiedman took my grandfather to the Jewish Free Loan Society, where he got a loan of $5. And then he took him to the synagogue, where he will pray, because he was a religious man. Then he took him to a rooming house, where he put down $1 down on a room. And then he took him down to the market, where the fruits and vegetables came in from the outlying areas. And he bought him a push cart. Inside of 24 hours of arriving in Winnipeg, my grandfather had already a place to live, a place to pray, and a job. And that was the beginning of my family history in Winnipeg.